Previously, this was the engine lid I took off the car to get powder coated, and this was the spare. It's back from the powder coater, but you can see there was a lot of rust underneath there, probably filled with bog. It also looks like the sandblasting has warped the metal here as well. And there's also more rust on the side here. The back of the tray does not look damaged, as well as underneath looks fine as well, but I'm going to need to get this fixed. The center console has a larger piece of plastic on the left and a little bit less on the right. The boot that goes in place is also slightly offset to the left. It can be put in either way. But if you get it right, it looks centered. Now to put the boot on in the correct orientation, and there's something I forgot to do here which I'll come back on. The center consoles are quite brittle and crack easily. It's not worth bending or flexing, just lift the handbrake and put it in position. The first thing I'm going to connect is the cigarette lighter. Then organize all the other wires and put them through the correct holes. I'm putting on the hazard switch and attaching the fiber optic cable to the bottom, then turning it around and then plugging in the cable itself with the purple wire on the top. Next is the fan switch with the blue, orange and red wire. Now for the instrument lights with a orange, brown and blue wire. Then onto the courtesy light with a purple and a white and black cable with a space in between. If you have fog lamps, then this is where the switch would be. It uses the cables yellow, blue and green. If you don't have fog lamps, you'll have this blanking plate with connectors at the bottom. There's actually continuity underneath. And for the rear demister, it's just two orange wires that plug into here. I've now plugged in and pressed in the courtesy light. So now to do a test of the switches before I put it in position. So first up the courtesy light, and that works. And next the hazard switch. Then the fan switch. And then the instrument dimmer switch. Now for the fog lamps. And then the rear demister. I'm using this long USB cigarette lighter adapter, and when inserted the LED light comes on. And this is what I mentioned before, I should have put the cover on after the rubber boot, not now. The vents installed on the side here look like this. They have a mesh on the back to stop leaves coming in. The one in the center does not have a mesh. The outer vents also have a plastic piece like this, as well as a clamp to hold it in place. The top vent is held on by clips. There are 3 on each side. The correct orientation is in this direction and you just press it down. The vent is fed by this duct which goes in this orientation and slots in here. There are 4 slots across the top here that hold the dashboard in place. And this is what they look like on the dashboard. And now to put the dashboard into position. Just a bit of wiggling to get everything in the right place. So with the dashboard installed, you can see how it fits in that slot. There are only 4 20mm bolts that hold the dashboard in position. They are located in these positions. Now to insert the air vents in this orientation, there is a clip on each side that holds it in place, and you just simply put it in and press it in. And now to do some more wiggling to get the center console into position. There are 2 sizes that are used in the car. There's a 20mm and a 17mm. The 20mm actually goes in the center console here. And the other 2 screw positions are here and here. This section will crack and break if you do it too tight. So now that everything was tested, I'm going to push the switches into position. And in goes the cigarette lighter. And of course next my 5-speed polish gear knob. And now for the passenger blanking plate. There are 4 screws that hold it in place. The large one is on the top and the small ones are on the bottom. This instrument cluster came with the car, but I do have a brand new one I can use. So this silver thing here is the speedo cable that screws on the back. I have the end of one here. I can demonstrate how you have to screw that in. So with your hand down this hole, you basically have to grab this end and screw it in with your fingers. Now to connect all the cables in the back of the instrument cluster, they only go in one position. And now to contort my hand to get the speedo cable in. There are 5 Allen key screws that hold the instrument cluster in place. There are 2 short ones at the bottom and 3 long ones at the top. I have my drill attached to the end of the speedometer cable, this way I can test to make sure it's working. Inserting the headlight switch, These keyed plastic pieces cover the vent levers. The vent is keyed on the right here, and on the left here. So when you insert them, they make a click. And now to put the column back, it's held in place with just one bolt on the steering rack. I've loosely connected the steering column so I can put the steering column switches in place. The top of the steering column cover fits here and is easy to get in place with the steering column in this position. Once in place, it becomes a lot more difficult. Putting in the two 10mm breakaway bolts and the two 13mm nuts loosely so I can manipulate the steering column into position. Now to connect the column switch cables, ignition on, and then test the horn. So low beam, high beam, indicators left and right, and then the wipers. This Series 1 steering wheel had a metal ring in the center with a spring, where the later series had the springs on the outside. The Series 1 horn was made of two pieces of hard plastic. The later series had more of a rubbery style like this, one piece. One had a Fiat logo, one was plain, and the other had the Fiat wreath. I'm polishing up the horn button contact here and then putting on some dielectric grease. So I have the column loose here, and this is the indicator return ring. You can see there's a small hole in this position. So it turns with the wheel and then brings back the indicator. The steering wheel has a little pin here which is for the indicator. When you look at the back, you can see it goes all the way through, and when you push it, it pushes the pin forward. So if you have the indicator return slightly in the wrong position and you put the steering wheel on, the pin will stick out like this. But when you turn the wheel, it will click into place. Hand tightening the wheel on, that little pin is out because I don't have it lined up, and pushing the stalks towards me. I know they're far enough forward because the pin is out. Using an 8mm to tighten the switches onto the column. And now to test the indicator return switch left and right. There are probably other ways of doing this, but this is the way I've done it and it works fine for me. I've tightened the bolts that hold the column to the chassis. Now lining up the top cover to the bottom cover and using 4 of these screws. Then there's one of these screws that go through the cover into the column switch itself. Then to put the metal ring on for the horn, and then the nut. With the wheel in the lock position, you can just tighten up the steering wheel and then put on the spring return for the horn. And then to put the cover on for the horn itself, I would say I probably need to remove this again later to line up the wheel to the actual steering. There are two 23mm screws that hold the rear vision mirror in place. Then a 12.75mm screw to hold the targa latch. And 4 12.75mm screws hold the sun visor in place. And tightening these 2 screws helps the sun visor stay in place. The cover for the tyre is held in place by this metal strip which has 3 17mm screws. Now to install the 2 plastic vents by just pushing them in place. And then some rubber covers for the pedals. The Fiat X19s used this type of mechanism for the safety belt with this type of clasp. The later Bertonis used this type. You can see they look different. The buckle on the Fiat was this type, however they were used on many other cars as well. The later Bertonis had this type. One of the cars that used a very similar safety belt mechanism was the DeLorean, so I ordered a new old stock set. So this is the DeLorean safety belt set. It looks quite similar to the X19. The buckle looks very similar and it has a nice print on there as well. The safety belt mechanism also looks right with the right clasp. And it also came with some covers for the top. However, side by side, this is the X19 and this is the DeLorean. You can see it's a lot shorter. The 3 mechanisms I have here is the DeLorean, the Bertoni, and then the Fiat. So this metal piece is flat and it holds under this lip. The DeLorean one is round, not flat. So on its side, the DeLorean on the right, the Bertoni in the middle, and the Fiat on the left. They're all made by the same manufacturer, but there are some slight differences as well. The Bertoni has more of a kind of coating on the top there with the metal, where the Fiat had more of a metal type like this. and it looks like the DeLorean also shared the same part as the Fiat. The distance from here to here and from here to here is almost the same, except for this round curb. So all I need to do is just flatten out those curbs and it should fit fine. Now that it's flat, I can put it in place. It actually fits better than the original. Here I have another safety belt which I can demonstrate how this bit gets assembled. So this small plastic ring goes on there first, then the same plastic ring goes on but the other way with the lip facing down. Then a metal washer, and then 2 metal rings like this. This is the largest of the 3 bolts at 41.5mm, and then screwing it into place. Having this set up correctly allows the belt to move, and then to just slip on the cover. The bottom section's held on by 1 bolt and then 1 metal ring on the inside. It measures at 31.5mm. Screwing it into place and then putting the little plastic cover on top. The mechanism is held in place with just 1 bolt at 26.5mm. Pulling the belt out of the reel gives you enough space to put the bolt in underneath. The buckle bolt is 31mm long and it fits through the hole here. On the other side is a rubber cover and then the small metal ring. And then lastly a plastic cover on the other side. Here is a comparison of the 2 buckles. I'm going to be using the DeLorean one. Tightening it in place and then putting the cover on top. I'm putting some white grease onto the rails and also onto the seat rails. There's a spring under the seat which assists the seat moving forward. I'm not going to install it and it's really not necessary. I'm not going to put the seat any more forward. And now to put these seats onto the rails. It's not that hard to do, just got to get the right angles and then just push it back. And the same again for the driver's side. I'm popping off the external trim here in order to put on the internal trim. Once in place, you just press it down between the car and the door card. And there's a tiny screw that goes in here, and that's why I removed the external trim in order to get to that screw. And now to put back the external trim. Using a plastic spatula here, I just make sure that the plastic trim fits underneath properly. The interior is now complete. There are still a few things I need to do, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with the result. But next time. I put on a hubcap, I peel the sticker, and I go for a test drive.